Nothing? Hello world, welcome back to another video. It's September already, I can't believe it myself, and that means it's time to tell you all about the books that I read in August. So without further ado, let's get into my August wrap up. So the first book I finished in August is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. This is part 2 in the Kingkiller Chronicles, which means it's the sequel to The Name of the Wind. I started this back in July and I kind of paused it when the booktubeathon happened, because obviously I wanted to focus on the booktubeathon. And then I didn't pick it back up for a while because I just kind of wasn't really feeling it, and I wanted to give this book kind of the time and attention I feel it deserves, so it took me a while to get back into it. Like its prequel, this book represents kind of one day of storytelling. The main character, Quoth, is telling his life story to the chronicler. There are a lot of the same characters obviously in this book as there are in the first part, and a lot of the same kind of conflicts and themes that return. You do get to see a lot more of the world as a reader in this book, which I thought was very nice, because there's a lot of information that's, you know, alluded to in the first book but isn't really expanded on, and it's really nice to get to know kind of different cultures and different countries and different parts of this universe. I do feel like not a lot of progress was made in terms of kind of answering the questions that were raised in the first part, so I'm very curious to see how that is going to be resolved in part 3. There hasn't been a release date announced for the third part yet, which is making fans all over the world very anxious, including me now. I ended up rating this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend this series. Next up, I finished The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck by Sarah Knight. Sorry for swearing, but that's just the title. I borrowed this from Leon months ago and I started reading it, but for some reason I stopped in the middle of it. It was easy to get through, but I just kind of finished a chapter and never started the next one for some reason. I finally decided to pick it back up and finish it because it was kind of in the back of my mind the whole time, which is something that I don't handle very well. I enjoyed this book, but it didn't have the impact on me that I know it did have on other people, and I think that has everything to do with kind of the energy and commitment I put into this book myself. This book isn't just this one person, Sarah Knight, telling her story. It's also very much a practical book, giving you kind of tools to apply her method yourself. And I didn't really do that. I didn't make any of the lists that she said you should or could make. I just read the book. I also felt like the book was very clearly written from an American perspective by someone who's a bit older than me and like in a different stage of her life, which is, all of those aren't necessarily bad things, but it just meant that it wasn't as relatable to me. Overall, this book got me thinking. I like to think it did kind of influence me a little bit, but it didn't really shake my world, and I ended up rating it 3 out of 5 stars. Finally, I read The Whore's Child and Other Stories by Richard Russo, which was a fun title to read on the train, let me tell you that. This is a short story collection that I borrowed from one of my co-workers, the same one actually that I borrowed 10 Sorry Tales from, which I read I think back in March or April or something. Unlike that collection, these stories are very much grounded in reality. There's no magic, there's no magical realism, there's no surrealism or absurdity. It's just real stories about real people. There are a couple of themes which kind of return in a lot of the stories, such as islands and fairies and the beach and the sea and everything that's kind of connected to that. Also the relationships between parents and children, parents and grown children, parents and how that relates to the children. And also, I'm not sure exactly how to put this into words, but people who are not in their first relationship. A lot of the stories are also very focused on looking at the past. The characters are looking back on their own lives, or the story is looking back on the characters' lives and stuff like that. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this. I think 1 or 2 of the stories were not really my cup of tea, but that's something that always happens with short story collections. They can't all be amazing and exactly to your tastes. I do have to say that while I enjoyed reading this book, it's not something that I feel like I want to go back to. It's not something that I think is going to be very memorable to me. I really enjoyed reading it, but I've already sort of forgotten what some of the stories were even about. It was nice, it was fun, But that's it. I ended up rating this 3 stars out of 5, but I would have given it a 3.5 if that had been an option, but it's not on Goodreads, so. So those are the books that I read in August. There's 3 of them, which is not a lot for me, but it's fine. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading in September, so yeah, it'll even out. If you've read any of these books and you want to talk to me about how you felt about them, definitely do so in the comments down below. If you want to talk to me about the books you read in August, you can do so as well. That would be fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again next time. Bye!